He came not through warp storm nor demonic rite, nor by any known heretic portal carved into the stars. He simply appeared, as if history itself had blinked. A figure in obsidian armor laced with green-lit glyphs, his hands crackling with logic-defying sorcery, and a mind that believed it could outthink fate itself. Victor von Doom. And the galaxy did not welcome him. It judged him. Across Terra's ancient surface, the statues did not move. The golden throne did not groan. But the air shifted subtly like a world exhaling before it roared. In the deepest vaults of the Inquisition, cogitators stuttered. A new presence had entered the skein of war, not as demon, not as Xeno, not as rogue psyker, but as a challenger. And far above, behind the unseen eyes of 100 million shrines, the one who never sleeps. The Emperor of mankind did not rise. He did not speak. He did not strike. But doom had been seen, judged, calculated, and now Terra would decide if even the genius of Latveria could survive a galaxy that does not forgive the presumptions of gods. Because here in the grimdark there are no myths, only thrones, and thrones do not kneel, they consume. If you hear the hum of golden circuitry, if you feel doom's will claw at the very laws of reality, then stay with us. Subscribe, like, and share before the next god tries to rewrite the stars and finds the Emperor already waiting. There were no sirens when he came, no alarms, no warp quakes, no demonic portents screaming across the stars. The Astronomicon did not flicker, nor did the Emperor stir, yet something in the bones of Terra twitched. A memory it had never made, rising from the folds of unreality like a thought long denied. Above the skies of the cradle world, far beyond the defenses of the Imperial Palace, a fracture appeared. Not of warp stuff or Empyrean essence. It was clean, too clean, like a cut made by a scalpel that did not exist, through fabric no one knew was there. It hovered, humming in violation of silence. Then it folded, and from its depths stepped the one who had written his name into every reality he touched. Victor von Doom. He emerged not as an invader, not as a refugee of multiversal collapse, but as a sovereign. His cloak did not flutter in the void. It commanded it. His armor gleamed with fusion logic, chronal shielding, and the glyphs of dead galaxies. In one hand he held a sphere that recorded thought itself, and in the other a tome bound in his own future failures. A Latverian spell engine bound to a mind that had refused every law, mortal and cosmic. Terra's defense grid hesitated. Protocols stuttered. Even the machine spirit recoiled, uncertain whether this presence was an anomaly or a test. In the noosphere, binary cants flickered. Non-demonic, non-xenos, non-imperial, and then unknown prime. The black ships held their position. The Adeptus Custodes did not mobilize, for Doom did not land with violence. He landed with intent. He chose a plateau outside the hive cluster of Magnus 5, an area once used for pre-unification observatories, now buried beneath rusted statues and memorials to forgotten saints. The ground welcomed no one, but when Doom's boots touched the dust, the wind changed direction. Across the globe, far within the inner palace, a servitor collapsed mid-function. Its last spoken word before death was doom, and in the chamber beyond time, upon the throne that bound a star's worth of souls, the Emperor remembered. Not Victor, not Doom, the pattern. Doom erected a citadel within hours. Its walls were matter rewritten, designed to warp gravity and calculate probabilities in real time. A fortress not of war but of observation. He needed no spies. The Imperium spoke in signals, in emotion, in the screams of psychers and the tension of silence. He could read it all, taste the fear beneath faith, the decay beneath duty. He studied their god, The corpse that wasn't a corpse. The Emperor seated for 10,000 years upon his throne of gold, radiating light that was not light. Doom did not believe in gods, but he respected function, and the Emperor's function defied classification. "This is not divinity," Doom muttered in the solitude of his command chamber. "It is concentration. Efficiency. Compression of will." His armor adjusted its sensors. His mind extended, sorcery and mathematics intertwined like twin serpents. He searched for weakness, for symmetry, for a flaw. All systems returned nothing, not silence, not emptiness, just indifference. As if the throne had noticed him and simply moved on. It infuriated him. He did not rage, he did not lash out, but his hands clenched behind his back. "You presume to ignore me," he said, his voice echoing in anti-harmonic waves. "You presume to understand me?" In that moment, he sent a ripple, a mathematical spike through the noosphere. It contained no virus, no weapon. It was a signature, a statement. "I am here. And I am not yours," Mars responded first. Skull-faced tech priests activated Void Fortress's long-thought ceremonial. Mechanicus high priests screamed litanies over scrap code-saturated frequencies, calling upon the Omnissiah for guidance. But the machine god did not answer. He did not need to. Doom was not theirs to understand. He walked the wastes of Terra in daylight, absorbing relics and cathedrals, watching pilgrims crawl beneath banners older than their bones. He did not judge them. He analyzed them. Why would a civilization this vast cling to myth, if not for the truth it half concealed? He touched the base of the imperial aquila etched into a shattered basilica. He traced its wings, then whispered, "This is not just a symbol. It is a seal, a lock. But what then lies behind it?" Across Terra, some fell to their knees in spontaneous seizures. Astropaths vomited ink-black fluid. At the heart of the Inquisition's black vault, a blank book began to bleed its first word in red: Doom. Then finally he made his demand. He appeared before the Eternity Gate, unsummoned. No portal, no guards. The custodes sensed his presence before they saw it, stepping through golden light with weapons sheathed. Doom did not attack. He simply stood. "I wish to meet the one you serve," he said, and the gate did not open. But behind it, in a place where breath had not been drawn in 10,000 years, the Emperor's vision narrowed. It did not focus. It did not care. But it saw. And Doom felt it. He would never admit it, but he felt it. Not power, not hatred, not welcome. Relevance. He had been noticed. And in that one moment the stars tilted. Victor von Doom did not sleep. Not because his body no longer required it, though it didn't, not since his mind had transcended mortal thresholds. He refused rest because rest implied there was nothing left to learn. And in the heart of the Imperium, beneath its layers of ritual, superstition, and decay, Doom saw patterns forming, fractals of thought, looping logic buried beneath incense and prayer. He knew what most in the galaxy never dared whisper, that the Imperium was not built on ignorance. It was built to protect others from knowledge. In his sanctum, suspended above Terra by anti-gravitic pylons that violated 3 laws of mechanicum doctrine and 4 of physics, Doom constructed a map. It was not made of paper or data or cogitate or render. It was made of intent, warp fluctuations, astropathic bleed, servitor drift patterns. All of it formed a message, not written, not spoken, but implied. And at the center of that pattern stood the Golden Throne. He studied it not through telescopic feeds or sanctioned intelligence, but by listening. Not with ears, but with thought. The throne did not scream. It hummed, a sound not of machines, but of will, compressed, ignited, sustained. A human mind drawn tight enough to tear stars in half. He admired it, even envied it. But envy was only useful if it led to conquest. So he began his work, using a fragment of corrupted STC recovered from an alternate future, a timeline where the Great Crusade had failed. Doom recreated the schematics of an early proto-throne. He fed it warp equations transcribed from demon-cursed sorcery and corrected them through quantum inversions. He laid them beside neural echoes drawn from the Emperor's scattered psychic signature, taken from the dust of Terra itself, not soul, not shade, just trace. Then he ran simulations, 10,000 of them, each one failed. He expected that. Failure was information, pattern. Doom believed in mastery, not perfection. But there was something wrong in the results, something illogical. Every projection of the Emperor's psychic signature revealed resistance, as if the subject was aware of the observation. He paused. He had seen this once before, when confronting the living tribunal, a cosmic force that judged the multiverse. He'd peered into its essence, only to feel it peer back. This was worse. The Emperor was not judging him. He was studying him in return, silently, endlessly, as if Doom had been classified the moment he stepped through the rift. "No," he muttered aloud, recalibrating psychic dampeners. "That is impossible. He is bound. He is immobile. He is—" He stopped. The phrase echoed in his chamber. He is, not was, not once. Is. Was this power truly constrained to that throne? Or had the Imperium lied, even to itself? Across the chamber, Doom's voice-commanded servitors twitched. One of them, fused into the wall like a flesh antenna, began to mutter scripture backwards. He silenced it with a flick of his hand. The psionic field thickened. He stood still, analyzing. Was it a psionic bleed or— No. It was something else, not attack, not defense, contact. He spun toward the wall where no screen existed, no vox feed, no connection of any kind, and yet an image formed, not visual, not auditory, but total. A memory that wasn't his, a vision shaped like judgment. He saw a battlefield, countless corpses, a golden figure striding through blood like a walking sun. Not Doom's sun, no fusion core, no starfire, but something absolute. Every movement was law. Every word was design. Then Doom saw himself. Armor cracked. Gauntlet raised in defiance. Mouth open, not in rage, but in refusal. And the golden being? It did not strike him. It erased him like an idea that had never proven useful. Doom tore the vision apart with a snarl, surrounding his mind with counter-psionic layers so dense they distorted time. His system screamed, his armor vented dimensional plasma, the machine spirits within his fortress wept. He did not care. He stood panting, fists clenched, heart rate slowed only by the armor's command. Then he whispered, "He knows me. No longer the Emperor. Now he, personal, dangerous." Still, Doom was not broken, only sharpened. He redoubled his efforts. He sent encrypted code bursts to Mechanicus nodes across Sol, offering secrets, ways to heal Titan's reactor scars, methods to stabilize Phobos' failing atmospherics, all of it bait. And from the forge moon of Calathra Prime, a single word returned written in ancient Cant Mechanicus. "Why?" He responded with a single phrase, "To perfect the Imperium." No answer followed. But something changed. From beneath Terra's crust, deep within the sanctum vaults of the Ordo Malleus, ancient machines stirred. Doom's name began to echo through prophecy and corrupted STC fragments, always paired with one glyph. Protocol. Throne Calibrator. He was not the first to try, but he would be the last. His fortress began its shift into final configuration. No longer just a base of operations, it became a key. Not to unlock the throne, to override it. His equations now aimed not at destroying the Emperor, but upgrading him, reforging the throne into a new god engine, one Doom could share. Because Doom did not need to replace the Emperor. He only needed the galaxy to admit he could do it better. And in the silence between those thoughts, the golden throne pulsed once. Not in fear, not in anger, in acceptance. The game had begun. The golden throne does not think in ways the living can understand. It does not dream, nor does it sleep. It does not pulse with circuits or burn with raw flame like the plasma engines that feed it. It simply is, and has been, and remembers. For 10,000 years, it has devoured psychers and fed upon sacrifice, its purpose tangled in layers of contradiction, sustaining the Emperor's presence while sealing his body in timeless stasis. But the throne is not a machine in the mortal sense. It is a soul cage, a singularity of thought, and it does not exist in the present alone. When doom arrived, the throne did not stir, but its observation was not passive. It was recursive. Across the folds of the immaterium, it reached backward and forward into memories that had not yet occurred and choices never taken. And in one such spiral, it saw a man cloaked in green and ambition standing not before it, but within it. A paradox, a rival, a shape the Emperor had never accounted for and yet always had. On the edge of the Sanctum Imperialis, the air shifted. The gravity of presence pressed inward as if the soul of Terra were tightening. Not even the custodians knew why. They felt it, though. Their blades trembled, not with fear but recognition. Doom was not another alien incursion, not a heretic, not a demon host clothed in mortal skin. He was calculated anomaly, a threat not to the Imperium's body but its meaning. And the throne noticed. It did not issue alarms. It did not command the Sisters of Silence or whisper across astropathic relays. Instead, it leaned closer. A cosmic breath held in anticipation. For the first time in millennia, a mind stood before it, not bowed, not broken, but equal in hunger. Within the throne, the Emperor's essence stirred like drifting ash made conscious. His body remained immobile, flesh charred to golden bone, held aloft by mechanisms older than the Mechanicum's oldest creed. But his will, his memory, focused, not in rage, not in curiosity, in testing. He watched Doom walk the crust of Terra like a scholar in a graveyard. He watched Doom build equations to model divinity. He watched Doom challenge him, not with war, but with improvement. It was almost amusing. For all his genius, Doom misunderstood the one thing the Emperor had always known, that knowledge without sacrifice is hollow, and sacrifice without purpose is heresy. Still, he did not stop him, because Doom was not an invader. He was a mirror, and in mirrors even gods might see what they've forgotten. Within the palace, the librarians of the Adeptus Custodes felt the change. Their minds, guarded by null shields and soul wards, now trembled beneath silent pressure. One of them collapsed mid-chant, eyes burned with equations that had no origin. Another began painting a symbol on the floor in his own blood. A helix wrapped in flame crowned with a mask of iron. The symbol of a man who was not yet history. Doom. Meanwhile, Victor stood in the eye of his storm, watching the data cascade. He had decoded pieces of the Emperor's early design documents, some scribed in blood, some etched into the bones of pre-human constructs. Others bound in psychic fonts, only visible at absolute emotional stasis. None of it was enough. The throne defied completion, which meant, Doom reasoned, that it was either broken or perfect beyond measure. He did not fear either option. He feared irrelevance. In a moment of clarity, Doom activated his thought engine, a construct capable of simulating over 300 versions of himself, each built on a different philosophical lens. Together they debated what the Emperor was. One said, a man who became more by claiming less. Another said, a god masquerading as logic. A third whispered, he is the equation Doom could not write. Victor listened, then silenced them all. There are no unknowables, he declared, standing atop his sanctum tower beneath a dying Terran sun. Only fears disguised as truth. And the throne heard. It responded with silence, but that silence had weight. Doom's armor sensors registered no sound, and yet auditory nerves in every observer screamed with pressure. Across Terra, lightning struck shrines that had not seen storm in centuries. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica went silent for 10 seconds. No signal, no pain, no anything. And then, all at once, they screamed, "The throne is breathing!" Within the warp, demons stilled, not in reverence, but in recognition. Something was shifting in the narrative of power. The God Emperor, ever still, ever bound, had seen someone. Not a rival, not a savior, something rarer, a question. And questions are dangerous things in the Imperium of Man. Within the chamber beneath infinite marble, the Emperor's essence pulsed once, not in time, but in judgment. And far above, Victor Von Doom paused mid-calculation. His hand hovered over the next variable, and for the first time, he did not write it, because something was watching him, and in that gaze he felt finite, not broken, not defeated, but challenged. And Doom did not walk away from a challenge. Victor Von Doom did not believe in gods. Not because he could not see them. He had seen many, fought them, broken their avatars, shattered their icons, stood above their altars untouched while others wept in fear or awe. No, Doom's denial was never about evidence. It was about definition. A god, to him, was not a being of power, but a being who commanded meaning, and meaning could be understood, disassembled, rewritten. Which is why he stood on the cracked bones of Terra, wrapped in starlight and storm, whispering equations into the wind. He was writing a proof, one that would validate or disprove the divinity of the God Emperor of mankind. It was not an act of rebellion, nor pride. It was the highest form of respect Doom could offer. For to challenge a god was to admit they mattered. His fortress had reshaped itself into a living logic prism, every wall encoded with theories and myths from 1,000 species, every corridor humming with the calculus of metaphysical transference. Cult scholars of the Ordo Redactor wept just reading the silhouette of its data signature, and deep in its heart, suspended in null gravity, hovered Doom's working theorem. Divinity equals will times perception divided by limitation. The Emperor was the ideal test subject. His will, undeniable. His perception, vast beyond measure, echoed in the mind of every psyker across 1,000,000 worlds. But his limitation? That was the variable Doom could not solve. If he was bound to the throne by need, he was mortal. If he chose to remain, despite capacity to writ, he was divine. And if he did neither, if he had become something else entirely, something without axis or form, then the equation itself failed. And Doom refused to accept that. He tested every possible variable. He fed it data from the soul patterns of astropaths, from warp echoes in Shrine World sermons, from radiation bleed near the Golden Throne's crustal interfaces. He summoned controlled warp entities and dissected their awe when speaking the Emperor's name. Even they called him light that judges. Not as enemy, as function. He created psychic echoes of saints long dead, reconstructed through recovered faith residues. They screamed his name not in reverence but in recognition. And always the formula refused to resolve. Doom paced before the theorem as it floated, shifting like plasma caught in a prism. The failure wasn't data, it was conceptual. The Emperor was not just an entity, he was an event. A convergence of history, sacrifice, power, and choice. A thought struck him. What if the throne is not his prison? Doom whispered, but his answer. The room grew cold. Outside, his sentry construct spun to alert. No threat, just silence. Waited, watching. Doom continued. He adjusted the theorem, changed a single symbol. Now, divinity equals will times perception times sacrifice. And the equation balanced, for the first time. He stared at it for one full Terran hour, not in triumph, in reverence. The cold metal of his mask could not show it, but behind that steel was a flicker of something rare, not doubt, not fear, but respect. He had calculated the shape of a god, and the shape did not exclude him. Across the warp, the ripple traveled, subtle, purposeful, like a whispered chant in reverse. On Mars, a data slate long sealed by the Fabricator General cracked open, unbidden. Its message burned across the sky in binary fire. The throne has been measured. On Titan, a vault in the deepest layer of the Grey Knight's stronghold shuddered. Its occupants, those soul-bound elites forged in silence, felt something new. Not darkness, not chaos, uncertainty. And upon the golden throne itself, the Emperor's eyes did not open, but thought moved, not linear, not reactive, just present. And Doom felt it, like gravity pulling backward through time. In his chamber, he touched the projection of his formula and whispered, "I have proven what you are." No answer, only that weight again, the weight of a thought larger than history. And then, a whisper, not sound, not language, just meaning. "Then prove what you are." Doom reeled, not in pain but in recognition. The throne had not rejected him. It had invited him, not to kneel, to ascend. But that path required more than intellect. Surrender, and Doom had never surrendered to anyone. Yet the challenge was undeniable. Not to defeat the Emperor, not to dismantle him, but to match him. And so, Victor von Doom, the king, the scientist, the sorcerer, began the final phase, not of conquest, of transformation. Because to prove himself equal, he would have to become the one thing he had never truly been. Selfless, and the galaxy would tremble to witness what Doom beaked when he let go of everything. But purpose. The warp had never bowed. It twisted, consumed, reflected, but never yielded. It was thought unshaped, madness given color, the inverted sea upon which gods and ghosts walked barefoot through memory and sin. The Imperium was not a place, it was a reaction, a mirror that answered every whisper with a scream. But something changed. It began as silence, not absence, but pause, as though the warp were inhaling, waiting. And in that moment the demons felt naked. Creatures formed from fear and hunger paused their endless cavorting across ruined moons of thought. The greater beings, the lords of change who wove futures from madness, the keepers of secrets who fed on lust-tangled regret, grew still. Even Khorne's legions, ever roaring, held their blades in trembling fists. Something was moving, but it wasn't coming from Terra, it was returning to it. Victor von Doom had never sought the warp's favor. His contempt for its entropy, its unlogic, had been clear, but now, deep within his constructed sanctum in the subterranean catacombs of Luna's black rock, he had opened a corridor between mind and myth. Not a summoning, not a ritual, a proof. His theorem, refined, sanctified by will and sealed in logic, did not command the warp. It exposed it. It showed the warp that there was another kind of divinity, one not born of belief, but born of choice. And the warp, for all its screaming chaos boast, recognized something it could not unmake: purpose. It was not purity that shielded Doom from corruption. It was clarity, his mind sharpened through pain, vision, and absolute singularity of self, gave the warp nothing to infect. No contradiction, no thirst for power. He had power. He did not crave it. He used it. That terrified the gods more than any ward. Tsiench, the architect of fate, paused mid-threading a tapestry of futures. Slaanesh lost interest in a sensory rebellion unfolding across 6 dimensions. Even Nurgle, Rotfather of Eternity, stopped his garden spread to watch. And Khorne roared, not in fury, in challenge. On the bridge between Terra and Luna, Doom stood surrounded by warp light, his armor untouched, his soul unreadable. Around him, Custodes and Psychers collapsed in prayer or seizure. Choirs of astropaths vomited incense-colored blood. Data slates cracked, just displaying his coordinates. And still, Doom watched. He had cracked the pattern, not of the Emperor alone, but of divinity itself, and the warp had no defense, because for all its power, the warp was reactive. Doom was directive. On distant Cadia, a prophet of the Creed Imperialis screamed a sermon that no one understood. Her words, pure binary, streamed through tongues of fire. The ecclesiarchy declared her heretic, then saint, then sealed her behind iron for fear of what she might say next. Her final words before the silence: "He walks in will." The sea has knelt. On the bridge, Doom extended one gauntlet, not in arrogance, in invitation. And the warp bent, just slightly, just enough to acknowledge him not as an enemy, but as equation. In the throne room, the Emperor remained unmoved, yet the psychic tidal wave born from this interaction reverberated through the Astronomicon. Its light pulsed in binary resonance, flaring like a heart murmur in the night sky. Ships across the Segmentum Solar drifted off course for precisely 7 seconds. Navigators screamed in harmony. Their third eyes wept tears of molten gold. They all saw the same image. A man in green, standing beside the throne. Not on it, not against it, beside. And in the eye of terror, something ancient laughed. A laugh that had not echoed since the Horus Heresy. The laughing god? Number, not quite. The old laugh, the one from before even myths had names. Because someone had told the warp, "You are not eternal. You are understandable, and understanding is the first step to defeat." Doom returned to his sanctum, his calculations silent. He had not conquered the warp. He had simply refused to bow to it, and in doing so, made it flinch. In his chambers, a servitor delivered a message, a sealed data slate encoded with strands of proto-language lost to mankind before the Age of Strife. Doom read it. No expression changed, but his gauntlet clenched just slightly. It read, "Terra is watching." And now he knew. The Emperor was not testing him. He was waiting. For what? He could not yet say. But the warp, the wild, howling mirror of all things broken, had blinked, and Doom had not. The God Emperor did not need temples. He was one, a walking cathedral of memory, pain, and purpose, whose every thought lit constellations across human history. To worship him was to admit humanity itself could be more. To serve him was to carry a sliver of his will, like a burning brand inside your ribcage. And Doom had stepped onto that altar, not to pray but to debate. He did not kneel, he never would, but he had listened, and now Terra had listened back. What followed was not war, it was far worse, a conversation. It began with dreams, if such a word could contain what Doom endured. Dreams shaped by old Terran dialects wrapped in symbols that had not graced human lips since the time before fire. He walked through memory pictures, alive yet false. Titan bathed in silence, a custodian unhelmed in bleeding golden light, a broken orc teetering on the edge of enlightenment, sobbing beneath a sky made of thunder. Each vision asked him one question. Why do you seek meaning, Victor? Not power, not vengeance, meaning. And Doom answered as only Doom could, not with confession, but with argument. He built structures from syllables. He layered reason like armor, each word sharpened by a lifetime of conquest, pain, and precision. He spoke of nations rising and falling because a single man believed. Of the mathematics of hope, of the equations of will, of how even entropy must answer to direction. And the throne did not reply, but neither did it reject him. Instead, the trial deepened. He was shown the Grey Knights, his own unlikely allies, kneeling in fire, their oaths like knives against their tongues. He saw them not as tools of war, but as broken prayers wrapped in ceramite. Their loyalty was not love, it was defiance. They were not made to obey. They were made to refuse every voice but his. Could doom command them? Number. But he could understand them. He could speak in their language, not of purity, but resolve. That was the key. In the next vision, he saw a child, dirty, wide-eyed, clutching a rusted Aquila. No name, no future, just hunger and myth. The child looked at Doom not with fear, but with hope. And Doom flinched. Not from guilt, from recognition, because once, long ago, Victor Von Doom had also stared up at Titans and dreamed of reshaping the world so no child would ever beg again. And here he stood, face to face with a god king who had bled for that same dream, not with words, with existence. Another question rang out across the dream space. What is sovereignty without sacrifice? It burned. Because Doom knew the answer was nothing. Power not paid for was hollow. Dominion unearned was tyranny. And in that moment, standing before a god who never asked for thrones but bore one anyway, Doom felt something rare bloom inside him. Consent, not submission, but agreement. He did not want the emperor's crown. He wanted his burden, because only one who chose the weight was worthy to carry it, and Terra trembled. Not from assault, but from acknowledgement, for in that moment Doom was not challenger, he was inheritor. The warp howled, sensing the shift. Across the stars, psychers burst into flame mid-scream, shrines cracked under the weight of their own dogma. A cardinal in the segmentum obscurus tore out his own heart and placed it on an altar, laughing as he died, saying, "The masked one knows." And still Doom stood unbent. The trial was nearing its end. Now he stood within the throne's shadow, not physically but mythically, and the final test waited. It was not a duel, not a puzzle, just a whisper. Will you bear meaning if no one remembers your name? Silence. Even the warp dared not echo, because this was Doom's final contradiction. Legacy was his gospel, ego, his gospel's scripture. Could he endure erasure for a cause larger than himself? He did not answer quickly, but he did answer a single word. I would build meaning, even if the stars forget the hand that shaped it. The trial ended, and for the first time the throne replied, not in speech, in light. A beam of golden thought pierced every nightmare across the galaxy. Heretic prophets fell mute. Chaos demons screamed and turned to ash. The Astronomicon flared not with location, but with message. He is heard. Victor Von Doom opened his eyes. He was alone, but not unacknowledged. He stepped from his sanctum, gaze no longer seeking dominion, but service. And behind him, etched into the stone not by hand, but by will, were the words, "Gray is not weakness, it is balance." For millennia, the Grey Knights answered to no man, not to inquisitors, not to high lords, not even to themselves. Their vows were older than many of the Imperium's ruling doctrines, etched not merely in blood, but in soul iron, burned into the DNA of purpose. Each warrior was more than Space Marine. He was an oath given form, and yet now they stood in silence. Before a man with no gene seed, no psychic calling, no divine right of command, Victor Von Doom, he did not demand obedience. He offered alignment. The summit was held not in some grand cathedral, but in the ashes of a ruined Ordo Malleus bastion on Saturn's outer ring. chosen not for symbolism but for neutrality. The fortress was still scorched from demon fire, its corridors echoing with the screams of a psychic war that had left reality scarred and half forgotten. It was there the Grey Knights gathered, helms removed not as soldiers but as witnesses. Doom did not speak of honor. He spoke of utility. "You are the sword that bleeds to prevent infection," he said, his voice neither pleading nor proud, "but you do not know why the infection forms. You burn heresy, but you do not shape meaning. That is your failure. That is what I correct." He did not insult them. He revealed them. He spoke in the rhythms of absolute clarity. "We are at war with ideas, and I do not intend to lose to hallucinations masquerading as gods." Grandmaster Mordrek, once thought dead within the warp, stepped forward. His armor still bore the burn marks of a demon prince's talon across his shoulder guard. "Command is not given here," Mordrak said quietly. "It is earned by standing in the void and not blinking." Doom did not blink. "I have stood in worse than voids," he answered. "I have stared into the mirror of my own mind and emerged unfractured." The psychic pressure in the chamber grew dense, not from threat, but from recognition. The knights were not moved by charisma. They could not be deceived by demons nor swayed by words. But what they felt now was not persuasion. It was proof. He had not only survived the trial of meaning, he had been heard. And so a single helm knelt, then another, then 13 more. Each bowed not to man, but to function. Because in Doom they saw a clarity their scattered command had long lacked. He would not lead from tradition. He would lead from intention. And thus the flame began to rise. Not gold, not red, gray. A flame of balance, of necessary ruthlessness, of direction without emotion. The Imperium noticed. On Mars, tech priests received unrequested code pulses. Ancient STCS long thought lost began to flicker back into reality. Marked by a strange sigil, a broken Aquila reforged. The meaning was unclear. On Cypra Mundi, an entire department of the administratum went silent for 3 days, locked in meditative data reflection, reviewing 10,000 years of Grey Knight deployments. Their final report bore one phrase: "He refines the scalpel." And on Titan, the core fortress monastery of the Grey Knights, something unprecedented occurred. The wall of names, honoring every fallen knight, began to glow. Not from power surge, from consensus. They had chosen a new supreme commander, Victor von Doom. The title had no precedence, but neither did he. With his ascension came change, not of loyalty but of functionality. No liturgical declarations, no sermons, just adjustments. Wards redesigned for multidimensional logic, bypassing warp contagion. Codified language protocols for demon identification based on emotional residue, not iconography. Psyker training altered to include meditation within reason, not just emptiness. Small things, but effective things. Grey Knights adapted like never before, and the enemies of mankind felt the tremor. The word-bearers declared the change a heresy and launched a crusade on the planet Neminox Secundus, only to be met by Doom himself and Strikeforce Vortex, whose arrival defied warp prediction. The word-bearers were erased in 17 minutes. Not slain. Erased. Memory of them deleted from the nospheric echoes. Their names removed from demonic recognition. They had not simply died. They had become meaningless. The Grey Flame had spoken. Doom stood atop the ruined Basilica of Ruin in Neminox's capital, Vox Grill open. To fear gods is to kneel. To understand them is to rise. His words echoed across secure Imperial channels for 97 seconds before the Inquisition cut the feed. But in those seconds, billions heard. Not all agreed, but none ignored. On Terra, whispers began to circulate among the lower Ministorum ranks. A prophecy long hidden in the vaults of the Scholastica Psychana spoke of the masked balance. A being neither saint nor heretic who would command death not with faith but logic. The prophecy was dismissed by the Inquisition as apocryphal, but the Grey Knights remembered it well, because that prophecy was carved into the inside of their earliest librarium doors, and no one had ever known who put it there, until now. Gods do not fear, they define fear. They wear it as armor, they bleed it as perfume. To the entities of the warp, fear is currency, language, and law. Across the immaterium, doubt is a poison they feed to mortals. But what happens when that poison is turned inward? It began in whispers. Horn, the blood god, felt it first, not as a voice, but a hesitation. One of his champions, clad in crimson runes and screaming for skulls, had paused mid-slaughter. Just for a second. But it had never happened before. That warrior had been bred from rage incarnate, born of endless war zones, and yet, in the middle of his assault on the agri-world of Ventra 5, he hesitated, looked upward, spoke a name he had no reason to know. Doom. And then his skull shattered, not from a strike, but from contradiction. Rage cannot pause, and so it tore itself apart. Horn roared, the warp burned, but it did not answer. It echoed. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, recoiled in fascination. His great libraries began bleeding ink. Timelines unraveled themselves without prompting. Demonic scribes stabbed their own eyes with quills of fire, mumbling equations they could no longer predict. One phrase repeated across the probability lattice. Gray is not a variable. Tzeentch could not comprehend it. Doom had entered the lattice of potential, not as a chaos agent, nor as an anti-chaos node. He was a third state, a constant, not faith, not denial, direction, and direction cannot be rewritten. The very idea unmade several lesser change-bringers on the spot. Slaanesh watched in silence. Beauty, pleasure, sensation, all flowed without resistance. Yet something felt numb in the midst of a hedonistic blood opera on the demonic moon of Helixia. A dancer froze mid-pose, weeping not from joy but from understanding. She looked upon her reflection and whispered, "I feel nothing because I mean nothing," and vanished. Aesthetic collapsed into utility. Indulgence became irrelevant. For if purpose could be crafted by intellect alone, what need had mortals of temptation? Slaanesh twitched. It was not pleasure. It was panic. But Nurgle, the grandfather of decay, merely laughed. He welcomed doom. He had known something like this would come, not because he foresaw it, but because all things rot, even chaos, even gods. And now they felt it. The gray flame wasn't fire. It was limit, a concept anathema to the warp. Doom did not simply oppose them. He excluded them. In the Materium, things changed swiftly. The ecclesiarchy declared Doom's rise heresy, but found their sermons strangely unheard. Voxcasts failed. Mass processions fell into arguments. Pilgrims began asking why they walked at all, not in rebellion, in curiosity. Asking why was dangerous, because why led to doom, and doom led to meaning, not faith, meaning. The Black Library stirred. The Harlequins danced a new pattern, one unseen since the fall, a path that shimmered with logic, strategy, and cold, brilliant balance. The laughing god did not laugh. He watched, and wondered if this mask might be his undoing. On the edge of the galaxy, demons began to falter in their summonings. Cultists scrawled runes in blood only to see them rearrange into geometries they did not understand. Glyphs turned gray, sacrifices produced nothing because Doom had rewritten eligibility. The warp could no longer take from those who understood themselves. Doubt, that ancient bridge between reality and madness, had cracked, and Doom had rebuilt it in stone. It was not conquest, it was filtration, and not even the gods were immune. Deep in the Imperium, a conclave was held, not by mortals, but by the chaos powers themselves. A meeting of dread and dominion, no words, only presence, a decision formed. Doom must not be slain. To destroy him would validate his importance. No, he must be discredited, unmade not by blade but by contradiction. If he could be made to doubt, the system would unravel. Thus they shaped a new idea, a fifth god not yet born, a god of absurdity, one who would deny meaning, mock purpose, and laugh in the face of reason. A deity not of terror, rage, lust, or change, but of disruption for disruption's sake. A weapon against clarity. The seed was planted. In the minds of madmen, in the cracks of broken philosophies, in the algorithms of forbidden AI. It would take time, but if it bloomed, it would undo the gray flame unless Doom saw it first, unless he anticipated it, unless once again he became the variable they could not compute. It did not begin with blood, it began with laughter, soft, inconsequential, a child giggling at nothing in a broken hab block on a backwater hive moon. He wasn't watching a holovid. He wasn't being tickled. He was alone. And he laughed because a voice told him the world was a joke. That voice had no name, but it was growing. In the data wastes of long-abandoned Mechanicus archives, logic trees began collapsing mid-loop. In rogue AIs chained to dead satellites, recursive errors displayed symbols not in binary, but in Jester's script. Among the madmen of the galaxy, the void chant shifted from screams to punchlines. A fifth sin had been born, not rage, not decay, not indulgence, not mutation, but mockery. A force that did not seek dominion, nor victory, nor even chaos. Only pointlessness. A child's drawing scrawled across the stars in crayon blood. It had no agenda, only noise, no temple, only graffiti, no worshippers, only those who gave up trying to understand. It spread like a meme virus, a joke that infected minds, unmoored causality, and crumbled meaning into dust. It laughed at Doom, and for the first time since entering the Imperium, Victor von Doom paused. Not from fear, from disgust. He had faced gods of fire, of pain, of time and rot, but this was emptiness in disguise. A lie of joy concealing the murder of significance. Meaning Doom knew could endure pain, could endure loss, could even endure contradiction. But it could not survive ridicule. And now the warp had birthed a clown, not of comedy but of entropy. The fifth god had no face. Its symbol was a mirror with a crack. Its demons danced in error codes and farted logic. Its first greater demon was born on the planet Clasio Null, erupting from a Vox tower that had broadcast inspirational sermons to 1 billion workers. The sermons inverted mid-sentence, transforming into nonsensical nursery rhymes laced with anti-logic. The people laughed themselves to death, and the demon was fed. It had no name, so Doom named it Absurdion, the mockery given flesh, and in naming it, he anchored it and began to hunt it. But Doom was not naive. He knew he could not out-joke a joke god, so he used something else, clarity. He called the Grey Knights not to war, but to witness. They arrived not in drop pods, but in philosophical formation, arrayed around the site of Absurdion's latest echo, a derelict ship where the air itself rhymed. Doom entered the madness and did not flinch. Absurdion met him with carnival screams, turning the laws of gravity into riddles, melting colors into textures that bit and moaned and giggled. Doom walked through it, because Doom knew the one thing absurdity could not defeat: purpose. Not meaning as belief, not meaning as emotion, but meaning as will. He did not argue. He did not rage. He built. Each step laid structure. Each gesture outlined logic. He sketched an entire belief system mid-stride, a framework of thought that excluded nonsense not by denying it, but by offering something stronger. The demon screamed. It became a child, a choir, a crying mother, a gray mirror. But Doom did not react. He simply defined. Purpose is the line between sound and noise. I do not silence you, Absurdion. I make you irrelevant, and then he spoke math. Not numbers, conceptual math. Values assigned to virtues, weights to words. His voice became a function, his body the operator. Absurdion split in 7, laughed, died, returned, then cracked, because it had not expected structure, not from a mortal, not from anyone, but structure was what Doom was, a god in iron's clothing. Absurdion shrieked one last time and collapsed into a puddle of unfinished sentences, and Doom turned to the Grey Knights. It will return. They nodded, for they had felt it. The fifth sin was not dead, only delayed. Because absurdity was not a god, it was a condition, and like rust it returned where vigilance slept. Doom would not sleep. He could not afford to, because the joke only wins when the serious stops building. The galaxy turned, not from explosion nor from collapse, but from definition. The warp, once a sea of screaming gods, began to ripple in unfamiliar patterns. Not because it was dying, but because it had been taught something it had never needed. Boundary. Victor von Doom did not ascend. He did not fall. He built, and in the vast, still-smoking ruins of a fractured sector, he stood surrounded by the finest minds, the boldest soldiers, the most faithful skeptics the Imperium could provide. Grey Knights stood vigil. Tech priests recorded without blinking. Astartes watched, confused but alert. The Adeptus Custodes sent 3 of their own. It was no throne he built. It was a machine. Not one of gears, but of ideas, a consciousness engine, not sentient but reflective. A device that accepted no power input, only principle. Into it, Doom poured not algorithms but axioms, not command code but meaning. From it he extracted a single pulse, a resonance that, when broadcast across the noosphere, made heresy flicker, blind faith tremble, and despair pause. He called it the meaning engine, not a weapon, a filter. Its function was simple. When exposed to the signal, any being, mortal, machine, even psychic, would feel for a few heartbeats the weight of their own reason to exist, not imposed, not dictated, not preached, revealed. Some wept, some screamed, some, like the radical Inquisitor Varan, went mad, but most simply chose better. The Imperium changed, not quickly, not evenly, but across thousands of systems a new logic took hold. Work became purpose, law became structure, worship became intention, and chaos, it fought. Oh, how it fought. Demons clawed through the veil with renewed fury. Cults rose like tumors. The fifth god, Absurdion, returned in fragmented forms, anti-thoughts, corrupted memes, wars fought over nonsense. But it was too late. Doom had planted an immune system, not of flesh, of will, and that meant the warp had lost its monopoly. The Grey Knights did not fall back into secrecy. They became teachers. Temples were rededicated not to blind veneration, but to philosophical challenge. Chaplains and tech adepts debated in public. Mortals were trusted with knowledge. The Imperium, still brutal, still immense, began to think. And Doom, he did not stay. He walked into the eye of terror alone, not to fight, but to demonstrate. It is said he found the source of the fifth god, not a god at all, but a wound in the warp's own psyche, a joke the universe had once told itself, and then forgotten to laugh at. He repaired it by remembering, and by naming it. The flaw that proves the structure. He did not destroy it. He gave it context, and in that act he became something no Chaos God could ever understand. Finality. He was not immortal, he would not live forever, but the engine would, the thought would, and in the galaxy where billions suffer, kill, and pray, there now existed a voice that did not scream, command, or whisper. It offered, and those who heard it made a choice. Some turned away, some stepped forward, and some, in their final breath, said, "I know why I am," and smiled. For that reason alone, Doom had won, not by being God, but by making gods unnecessary. He vanished after that. No tomb, no record, only the engine, still pulsing, still asking, still reminding the stars that order, when forged by clarity, can outlast madness. And in that long silence, where empires rise and fall, where prophets scream and machines dream, a single name endures, not as fear, not as law, but as proof. Doom.